Hello friends, today's video we delve into the mysterious tale of a young girl named Jennifer who seemed no older than 18, trapped by a demonic witch in London. With great confidence, she stepped down from the first class compartment of the train. It was around 7 or 8 in the evening. The air was quite chilly. As a gust of wind wrapped around her, she adjusted her shiny black hair with her long fingers. Jennifer quickly placed her new suitcase and a lightweight typewriter, which was easy to carry during travel, in front of a porter. "There should be a taxi waiting for me," she said in response to Porter's questioning look. Glancing at the other passengers who appeared huddled and shrunken in the dim and inadequate light at the station, Jennifer gestured for Porter to lead the way to find the anticipated taxi. In a mix of excitement and anxiety, she thought about her new job. The job had been offered by a private company, and all matters had been settled through correspondence. She had come to this remote area of London for this job. The yellow light of the moon pierced through the clouds, illuminating the surroundings. Just as she saw the porter returning with a shake of his head, a wave of unease surged within her. The porter, now close, said, "Ma'am, there's no taxi waiting for you here." At that moment, Jennifer's gaze fell on a man nearby who was biting on a rolled-up newspaper and removing his leather gloves. Jennifer, diverting her eyes from the man, said to the porter with disappointment, "But there should have been a taxi. Mrs. Leong had informed me in her letter that she would have arranged a taxi for me upon my arrival." The porter looked at her with indifference, as if uninterested in the matter, and then said, "But there's no taxi here. Where do you need to go?" "I need to go to Belford," Jennifer replied. The porter thought for a moment and then said, "Madam, you'll have to wait for the bus that will take you to Belford, or else—" He went off and quickly approached a man who was standing nearby, taking off his gloves and looking around. "Mr. Kent, can you give Madam a lift to Belford in your car?" The porter knew that the bus to Belford would take another 25 minutes, and even waiting for 5 minutes in this cold was challenging. "All right, I don't mind," the man named Kent said, looking at Jennifer. Jennifer handed Porter some money and with a piercing look at Kent said, "Thank you, I'll wait for the bus." Hearing this, a smile spread across Mr. Kent's face, which irritated Jennifer even more. However, she soon realized how difficult it was to stand in such cold. She was struggling to breathe when she looked for Mr. Kent and was alarmed to find him missing. She quickly looked around and saw Mr. Kent sitting in his car. Before he could start the car, Jennifer ran to him and asked for a lift. This time, Mr. Kent seriously asked her to sit, and as soon as she did, he started the car. They didn't talk much during the ride. However, when Kent asked, Jennifer mentioned she was here for a job. She also learned that Kent was a journalist. As they reached the Belford stop, Jennifer asked him to stop. When Kent offered to drop her off at her residence, she declined, saying she would walk from here. She wasn't comfortable with strangers, but when Mr. Kent told her she could contact him if she needed help in this unfamiliar city, she unintentionally gave him a paper with her address and took his phone number. Mr. Kent pocketed the paper without looking at it. Jennifer walked on from the stop. She didn't have much trouble finding her way as she had a map. Soon she stood in front of a black building. It wasn't very large but looked grand. "So I'll be staying here," Jennifer thought happily. Outside the building there was a sign with Mrs. Leong's name, but to her surprise, the door wasn't locked from the outside. Then Jennifer thought that perhaps Mrs. Leong might be here to meet her, or maybe there's a servant. But a servant for me? The thought made Jennifer laugh, and she briskly entered the building. Her astonishment grew when she found the building empty from the inside as well. If no one was here, why was the door left open? Wrinkles of concern appeared on Jennifer's forehead, but she was a brave girl and shook off all her thoughts. Feeling extremely hungry, her first thought was to find the kitchen. The idea of hot food and coffee made her stomach growl. She soon found the kitchen, a neat and tidy one with a small refrigerator. She was sure that there would be plenty of food inside, but when she opened it, an unpleasant odor greeted her. The fridge was completely empty, not even a single grape, and it was filled with a foul smell like of raw meat and blood. Jennifer quickly closed the door, feeling nauseated by the smell. She hurriedly searched the kitchen, but there was nothing to eat. The cabinets were empty, and even the taps had no water. In a state of severe distress, she stepped out of the kitchen. For the first time, she realized that the entire house was chillingly cold, even though all the windows and doors were closed. Weakened by hunger and cold, she collapsed onto a sofa. Suddenly, she felt as if someone sighed in the room. Jennifer looked around. There was no one else in the entire house. Then where did the sound come from? Jennifer moistened her dry lips with her tongue. She wished she had someone familiar with her at that moment, but she was completely alone in the city. She hadn't even met Mrs. Leong, who had offered her the job. On top of that, she was provided accommodation in this mysterious house. Jennifer began to feel angry at Mrs. Leong. In her frustration, her eyes landed on a telephone. A glimmer of relief appeared on her face. She had the phone number of the journalist who had given her a lift from the station. He seemed like a reasonable person. Jennifer immediately reached for the phone to talk to him and ease her anxiety. But as soon as she picked up the receiver, she realized the phone was dead. Her face turned red with anger. Cursing Mrs. Leong in her heart, she picked up her bag. I don't need to be scared. Maybe hunger has affected my nerves. Now I need to go out and get some food, she thought, and headed towards the door. But as she tried to open it, a wave of fear ran through her body. The door was locked from the outside. How did this happen? Who locked the door? Was there someone else in this house besides me? If so, why doesn't he show himself? Suddenly, she felt like a mouse trapped in a cage, rendered completely helpless. It felt as if an unknown entity had confined her in the room. What was going to happen next? Was she in grave danger? Tears welled up in her eyes due to the intensity of her distress. She silently retreated and sat on the sofa. She didn't know how long she sat there, lost in thoughts of her elderly mother and two younger sisters. Her father had passed away a few years ago, and she had no brothers, so the responsibility of running the household had fallen on her shoulders. This was the reason she had decided to take up this job instead of continuing her education. And without thinking, she had come alone to this unfamiliar city, finalizing all arrangements through letters with strangers. Suddenly, the room's door handle turned. Someone was about to enter. Jennifer quickly looked around, unsure of who was coming in and what their intentions might be. For her protection, she picked up a nearby vase and stepped back. The door then opened and a woman entered. As soon as Jennifer laid eyes on her, she was taken aback. The reason was the woman's persona. Tall and full-bodied, the woman looked quite wealthy. She had blue eyes adorned with golden framed glasses, which undoubtedly enhanced the beauty of her already stunning face. The woman appeared to be in her mid-30s and was dressed in an elegant black outfit. Jennifer stared at her, almost spellbound. "I am Mrs. Leong," the woman introduced herself, fixing her gaze on Jennifer. Jennifer suddenly snapped back to reality. "Mrs. Leong? The very woman who offered me the job? But how did she suddenly appear here?" Jennifer thought in confusion, but didn't muster the courage to ask. "I hope you like the house. I apologize for not sending a car to pick you up from the station. I tend to forget things. I hope you didn't face any trouble getting here." Jennifer wanted to say something, but it felt like her tongue was tied. Still, she managed to shake her head in denial. "All right, sit down. I'll get you something to eat. I like to take care of my employees. I don't consider anyone inferior to myself. You have traveled and must be tired. I thought I would personally serve you food and also check if you need anything else." Saying this, she headed towards the kitchen. As soon as she left, Jennifer took a deep breath of relief. Despite her beauty, there's something so mysterious and intimidating about her. And what could this cunning woman possibly bring for me to eat from this empty kitchen? Jennifer jerked her head towards the kitchen and sat on the sofa, lost in thought. Her hand accidentally knocked something on the table beside her, causing it to fall. She quickly bent down to pick it up. It was a statue of a girl made of stone. But what startled Jennifer was that the statue's face resembled Mrs. Leong. Suddenly it felt as if the statue moved and looked up at Jennifer. Jennifer felt as if her soul had left her body. She quickly threw the statue aside. "There's definitely some dangerous game being played here. This house feels cursed, and this woman seems no less than a malevolent spirit. I should run away from here immediately. Yes, I should run," Jennifer told herself and quickly got up to flee. But at that moment, Mrs. Leong emerged from the kitchen, holding a tray filled with various foods. Roasted chicken, sandwiches, a mug of coffee and more. Seeing the hot food, Jennifer's heart raced even faster because she knew there was nothing to eat or drink in the kitchen. Then where did this hot food come from in just a few minutes? Despite the cold, sweat dripped from Jennifer's forehead. "Sit down and eat," Mrs. Leong commanded, peering into her eyes, and Jennifer quickly complied. It was as if the woman's eyes had cast a spell on her. She sat silently and began eating, while the woman sat opposite her, watching her intently. When Jennifer finished eating, Mrs. Leong stood up. "Now I'll leave, you rest." Saying this, she walked out. As soon as she left, Jennifer felt as if she had regained consciousness. She rushed to the door, only to find it locked from the outside. "What devilish trap have I fallen into?" Jennifer exclaimed, holding her head. When she turned to look at the tray, her eyes widened in horror. The leftover food had transformed. Where sandwiches were, now lay bones. The roasted chicken had turned into severed human hands, still dripping blood, and the coffee she had drunk was undoubtedly human blood. The sight was so terrifying that Jennifer couldn't bear it and fainted. When she regained consciousness, she found herself in the same room lying on bed with a woman standing nearby busy with something. Jennifer remembered everything. The woman was undoubtedly Mrs. Leong, but what was she doing now? As Jennifer tried to sit up, the woman turned to look at her. Oh my God! Jennifer thought. Her face was terrifying. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Her lips were pale white, and her skin was as white as chalk. Her large eyes were bloodshot, as if all the blood from her face had pooled there. Then Jennifer's gaze fell on the woman's hand, and she screamed. In her hand was a large knife, shining like silver. In response to Jennifer's scream, the woman smiled, revealing her long, white teeth protruding from her mouth. Don't scream too much, girl. I'm sick. I need blood to recover, fresh and warm, from a healthy girl like you. Now lie down quietly so I can slit your jugular and quench my thirst with your blood, she said. Advancing towards Jennifer with the knife in hand, fear gripped Jennifer, and she was certain of her impending death. This mad woman, perhaps a malevolent spirit, would surely not spare her. Jennifer stared at Mrs. Leong, who was approaching her with the knife, moment by moment. Every person cherishes their life, and in that moment Jennifer acted on instinct. She quickly grabbed the bedsheet and threw it over Mrs. Leong, pushing her and running towards the door. Fortunately, the door was unlocked. Jennifer sprinted out of the building. It was around midnight, but the street lights illuminated the alley. Jennifer felt as if Mrs. Leong was chasing her. Suddenly, while running, she collided with someone and fainted. Meanwhile, Mr. Kent, a journalist who had given Jennifer a lift to Belford, reached home. As he changed his clothes, he found Jennifer's address in his pocket. Glancing at it, he was taken aback. The address read, House number 102, Street number 4, Belford, Black Building. He held his head in disbelief. This innocent girl's life was in danger. The building was infamous for being cursed. Previously, the bodies of 6 girls had been found outside it, their throats slit from ear to ear, and every drop of blood drained from their bodies. Investigations revealed that each girl was from a distant place and had come here for a job. Mr. Ken, being a journalist, was well aware of these incidents. He was furious at himself for not realizing that Belford was that cursed building and that Jennifer had come there for a job. He glanced at the clock. It was 11 p.m. He had to save this girl at all costs. He decided to seek help from Father Michael to combat the demonic forces. After briefing the father about the situation, both rushed to the building. It was the same moment when Jennifer had managed to escape from the building and the demonic woman was chasing her. Jennifer had just bumped into Mr. Kent, who immediately caught her, but she had fainted. The demonic woman stopped in her tracks upon seeing Mr. Kent and Father Michael. She tried to flee, but Father Michael acted swiftly, reciting prayers and pointing a crucifix at her. The demonic woman's body caught fire and she screamed in agony. The sight drew people from their homes who watched in horror. In moments, the evil witch was reduced to ashes. Previously, Father Michael couldn't harm her because she never ventured outside the building, and whenever he tried to enter, an unseen force prevented him. Now that the evil entity was dead, Father Michael sprinkled holy water around the building and set it on fire to ensure no other evil force could reside there. Back at the hospital, Jennifer regained consciousness and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. When Mr. Kent narrated the entire incident, tears of gratitude filled her eyes. She realized that it was the prayers of her elderly mother that had saved her life and that divine intervention had come to aid her. When Mr. Kent offered her a decent job in his newspaper, a contented smile spread across Jennifer's face. She had finally found a genuine job opportunity. Today's story is from China. It's a tale of a bus journey on a dark night, a journey shrouded in many terrifying secrets. Following this incident, many people stopped traveling at night, especially on this route. The story begins a few kilometers from Beijing, the capital of China, at the Yuangmingyuan bus terminal. On the late night of November 14th, 1995, a bus departs from this terminal. This was the last bus of that night, and its final stop was Xiangshan, also known as Fragrant Hills, located in Haidian district. The journey from Yuangmingyuan to Fragrant Hills was approximately 16 kilometers, and this bus was route number 375. The bus departs on time. At that moment, only two people were on it, the bus driver and a lady conductor. After 2 or 3 stops, the bus stops at a very famous place, Summer Palace. From this stop, an old woman, a young 22-year-old man, and a young couple board the bus. The young couple sits behind the driver while the young man sits on the seat by the door, and the old lady takes the seat right behind him. Now, the bus resumes its journey. In total, including the driver and the conductor, there were 6 people on this route 375 bus. The bus continued on its predetermined route, passing through the outskirts of the city. Apart from this bus, no other vehicles were seen on the roads. It was completely silent as it was almost midnight. The only sound that could be heard was the hum of the bus engine. Given that it was the month of November, it was also quite cold. A little later, as the bus passed 2 or 3 stops, the driver spotted 2 people standing in the darkness, waving to stop the bus. However, they were not at a bus stop. They were standing quite a distance before the next stop. At first, the driver decided not to stop, given they were not at a designated bus stop, unless when the female conductor of this bus tells the driver that this is the last bus on this route and no other bus will pass here after this, so she suggests he let those people get on. The driver feels that if he doesn't stop the bus, these poor souls will be stranded here all night, so he stops the bus. The door of the bus opens and the 2 passengers board. However, as soon as they enter the bus, it's revealed that they are not 2 but 3 people. The 2 of them had been supporting a 3rd person in between them in such a way that he wasn't visible when they were boarding. The person in the middle, who became visible after boarding, had both his hands resting on the shoulders of the other 2. The middle person's head was bowed down and his hair was scattered, making it difficult to see his face. The other 2 supporting him had faces that were completely pale, even paler than a normal human. All 3 were dressed in traditional Chinese attire, typically worn during Chinese traditional festivals. Afterward, these 3 sit on the back seat without uttering a word and the bus departs. However, seeing these 3, the other passengers in the bus become alarmed because it's the middle of the night and the sudden appearance of these 3 with their peculiar dresses added to their anxiety. They all look at each other with worry. The female conductor of the bus tries to calm the passengers, suggesting that these 3 might be actors from a play or a performance, and in their hurry to catch the bus, might have forgotten to change their costumes. So she advises everyone not to panic. Hearing the conductor's words, the young couple and the young boy seem to calm down, but the old woman remains unsettled, repeatedly looking back at the 3 passengers. After a couple of stops, the young couple reaches their stop and leaves. Now the bus heads towards its destination. On board are a total of 7 people, an old woman, a young boy, the bus driver and the female conductor, and the 3 passengers who boarded last. Outside, the sound of the cold wind could be heard, and inside the bus, the female conductor and the bus driver were joking around with each other. Suddenly, an old woman who was sitting stands up and starts shouting at a boy sitting in front of her, accusing him of stealing her purse. At this, the boy too becomes angry and starts arguing with the old woman. Hearing the commotion, the female conductor approaches and asks what happened. The old woman claims that the boy stole her purse, but the boy insists he didn't do such thing. The argument escalates to the point that the old woman grabs the boy's collar, saying she wants to get off at the next stop and hand him over to the police. The female conductor tries her best to calm the old woman, but she remains adamant. Finally, the bus driver stops at the next stop. As soon as the bus stops, the old woman drags the boy out. But once the bus leaves and the boy looks around, he sees no police station or anyone else. It's pitch dark. Frustrated, he asks the old woman why she had him thrown off, missing his last bus to home, especially when there's no police station in sight. The old woman tells him she didn't get him off for a police station, but she saved his life. She said she had no other choice and had to do it discreetly. The boy, puzzled, asks how she saved his life. The old woman asks if he remembers the 3 strange-looking men who boarded the bus last. He recalls and says they were a bit odd. She says that she felt something was off about them since they got on, and she kept glancing back at them. At one point, a gust of wind blew through the wind, and their clothes fluttered, revealing that they had no feet. She was certain they were not human. To save him and herself, she had to come up with false accusation to get him off the bus. The boy, in shock, starts sweating. They then find a police station nearby and tell them about the 3 mysterious men. When the old woman mentions that they had no feet, the police think she's joking or hallucinating. In the end, the police sent both of them home. After that, the night of November 14th, 1995 passed. But the next day, on November 15th, something astonishing was discovered. The last bus of route number 375, which had departed from the Yuan bus terminal to reach the Fragrant Hills, never arrived at the Fragrant Hills bus depot. This means that the bus, which should have reached the depot the night of November 14th, was still missing. Not only was the bus missing, but the bus driver and the female conductor were also nowhere to be found. Following this, the bus depot officials reported the missing bus to the police. As soon as the police learned that the last bus of route number 375 had disappeared, they remembered the old woman and the boy. Both of them were called in for questioning, and they repeated their story. This time, the police took their words seriously and listened carefully. However, this news leaked to the media, and soon the story of the missing route number 375 bus and the related tales spread like wildfire among the public. Rumors started, while the police continued their search for the bus without any success. Days passed, and it was now November 17th. On November 17th, 1995, the police found a bus submerged in the Mion Reservoir. The bus was pulled out with the help of a crane, and it turned out to be the very last bus of the route number 375 that had been missing for 2 days. When the bus was examined, 3 bodies were found inside: the bus driver, the female conductor, and another individual whom the 2 had been helping in the middle of the road, with disheveled hair. Now, while the police had found the bus, it only complicated the story further. The 3 bodies found in the bus were severely decomposed as if they had been dead for many days, even though the bus and these people had only gone missing 2 days earlier. It was impossible for bodies to decompose to such an extent in just 2 days. Even in intense heat, a body wouldn't decay so rapidly. Moreover, it was November, and during those days, the nighttime temperature sometimes even dropped to below freezing. Secondly, the location where the submerged bus was found was almost 100 kilometers away from the fragrant hills. When this matter was told at the bus depot, they said it is not possible for the bus to go another 100 kilometers because there wasn't enough diesel in it. Hearing this, the police were shocked. To check if there was diesel in the bus, they opened the fuel tank. However, as soon as the police opened the fuel tank, they found it filled with blood, which was very strange. After this, they checked the CCTV footage and found that the old woman and the boy had been seen getting off the bus at a certain point, but after that, the bus was not captured on any camera. No one had an answer as to why it wasn't captured. An investigation continued, but to no avail. As of 2023, almost 28 years have passed since this incident, but 4 questions remain unanswered. Who were the 3 people who boarded the bus away from the bus stop? How did the bus travel another 100 kilometers without diesel? Did it run on blood? Despite the cold, how did the corpse found on the bus decompose so quickly in just 2 days? Why wasn't the bus captured on any CCTV after the old lady and the boy disembarked? Some people consider this just a rumor. I tried to find more sources for this news, but I found limited ones. As you know, it's difficult to get news out of China, but the state newspaper Global Times has posted this news on its website, so there must be some truth to it. On the other hand, many people in China believe this incident to be true. After this incident, people nicknamed route number 375 as the haunted route. Even after so many years, this story is told and retold in China. I hope you like this haunting tale of China's route number 375. If you like the story, please like it and comment to tell how you found the story. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get more interesting content. Thank you.